Hey guys, this is Sean DeGray. Nobody knows who that is, but it's me.
And you are listening to
The Gritty Bowmen.
It's all in perspective, right? If you could make $150,000 a year, but you had to work 80 hours a week and you were committed to a corporation that you hated what you did, is that more lucrative than making $70,000 a year doing what you love with a lot of free time? And who's richer?
One of the things I never want to say, and I even think this with life, is I never want to say, like, what if? Like, what? I hate that. I hate that feeling. What if I would have done this? Or what if I would have just tried this? Or what if? What if? And there's very few things that I say what if about. Very few things. And that gives me a lot of peace of mind. So that helps give me drive, because I don't want to ever say what if.
Randy always says this, you're going to run out of health before you run out of money.
So they'll say, oh, yeah, deadlifting is going to hurt your back. You're like, why? Well, just because. Well, then don't pick up your backpack, homie, because that's a deadlift. Like.
What I never want to do is find myself with a 150-pound pack on, slipping on a rock that rolls, and then not having the strength or the connective tissue to like we talked before, to recover from those margins of movement that I don't normally use.
Okay, squatting is going to hurt your knees. Okay, well, don't sit on the toilet, because that's what you just did. You just did a squat. Oh, I'm ready.
All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Bowmen podcast. We're back with Chris Spealler. We're doing a high-tech Skype call, which is always fun.
Oh, yeah.
It's only took us like 20 minutes to get everything
I know.
dialed.
I mean, look at my headset. It's super high-tech.
Houston, there's a problem. I need that headset though.
It's top notch. I don't even know what it's got. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. There's all sorts of stuff happening.
Somebody asked me the other day why I used headsets instead of using like a lav mic, on my podcast.
Or like the cool ones that you see on the
like
Tonight Show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I answered his question, but the cool thing about the headset mic is every time you turn your head left or right, up or down, or you lean back or laugh, the mic follows you.
Always.
And so you get this beautiful little sound.
Yeah.
So today I wanted to talk to Chris. I was listening to your Icon Athlete podcast last week, and you had a guest on there, Rory Zambard. And
Yeah.
I don't remember what episode it was. I really enjoyed it. And Rory started CrossFit when she was pretty young.
Yeah, I think like 13 or 14.
Yeah. So she got in early, and she was working out and doing a lot of it, and she was, going for the games.
Yeah.
And then she talked about her journey doing that and how it pretty much wrecked her. And then you shared some of your own experience in that. And I've received a lot of emails and a lot of comments from people about, and it's not just CrossFit. It's football, collegiate sports, and other areas where people have gone deep into their competitive sports, whatever they might be, or fitness, to the point where they're broken, really broken, and they're like, you know what? I can't do basketball anymore, or I can't do CrossFit anymore because it just was bad for me.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to talk about that today. I wanted to hear you maybe share a little bit about that background on Rory. And for people who want to check out the podcast, they can go to iTunes and they can download it. It looks like it's episode 13.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Of Icon Athlete. And it's good. It's good stuff. And then you share yours, but I'd like to hear your journey as well.
Yeah. So I think understanding context is really important, right? Because let's take even like the term CrossFit out of it, because I think context is really important to understand, okay, like where am I? What's the purpose of what I'm doing? So the reason why Rory and I ended up where we are is generally because, or where we were, I should say, because I'm not there anymore, is we were at the highest level of competitive CrossFit. So for us, we had to do an amount of volume and lift weights in a way and do so many work workouts in a way that would allow us to adapt as much as we could to be the very best at CrossFit as a sport. So CrossFit as a sport, or being the fittest, trying to be the fittest person in the world, is a very different goal than having general physical preparedness, just being fit for anything in life. Those are two really different planets now. The way I like to kind of associate it with people is like we like to watch football, right? We like football.
Yeah.
And we probably play football. Like at Thanksgiving, it's like, hey, cool. Like I'll go play 2-hand touch with my family. It's like, that's still
or
football.
Tackle.
Yeah, right. Or it could turn into that. But what people, I think they, all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, well I play 2-hand touch football, so now I'm ready to go in the NFL. It's like, well, maybe not, And that's, I think what happens is a lot of people, especially myself and Rory, we were trying to be the very best at our sport, which at the time was CrossFit. And to do that, we had to do an amount of volume and lift weights in a way with a certain amount of load that would help us get there. And just like any elite athlete in any sport that I've ever seen, there are often repercussions for that. And that's what we dealt with. And most of it was overuse injuries or things like tendinitis, that can be resolved, but we have to take time off to allow that to happen.
Okay. So tell me about your journey. Like when you started to feel old.
Yeah.
Because
right. What's up with that?
Yeah. I don't picture Chris Spealler ever feeling old.
Yeah, I did. I think once I hit, so I slowly kind of increased my volume as I journeyed with CrossFit. I started in 2007, and I started off with just one workout a day, and it would take me no more than an hour. Good to go. About 2 years later, I started to add a little bit more volume.
When you say volume, you're talking increase.
Yeah, more workouts in one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so more pieces, I would work out more often in one day, and that turned into, maybe twice a week I would do 2 workouts a day, and the rest of the days of the week I'd do 1. Still good to go. Started to increase the volume even further, and that's where around 2013 volume, so more parts per training session, started to add up to be as high as 3 to 5 parts per day. And now that's when I start to notice my knees ache a little bit. But at that point for us, the CrossFit Games is every year. So it's really difficult to take a big chunk of time off and let ourselves fully kind of recover. So often athletes that kind of get a little bit of a nagging injury will try to mitigate it and work through it, just like I did and just like Rory did. And you just kind of deal with it. And then you show up and you perform and you throw down and the adrenaline kicks in and you do your best. But then afterwards, wow, I paid for that. My knees really hurt. Whatever that is.
It's just like a pro basketball player or a pro NFL player.
Exactly the same thing.
They got a job to do. They get paid every week. And it's often a discussion in professional sports. Like, let's, the people who run it, own it, they're like, hey, let's add 5 more games to the schedule this year. And it's like, the players are going, look, we play 4 games a week with, it becomes, just a lot of volume.
For sure. And that's what happened. That's what happened. And so I noticed once I kind of retired from competition in 2014, it took a while for my body to start to kind of settle down, and that inflammation in my joints and whatnot to go away. But it did. And I just had to be smart about what I did from there on out. It was lowering my volume, so a lot less workout. Working out 1 hour a day instead of up to 4 or 5 hours a day. It was just doing 1 part per training session. So I just do 1 workout instead of 2 or 3. And it was avoiding anything that aggravated my knees or my shoulder or whatever was bothering me. And over the course of time, things resolved. I didn't stop. I didn't stop working out. I didn't stop trying to be fit. I just was smart about what I did and chose to do things at the appropriate volume and chose to do things that didn't aggravate my body, and I got better.
Well, I've noticed that ego is a huge stumbling block to fitness.
It's so hard.
Because competition gets introduced. And you were talking about going on, just getting involved with, I think it was Dan Bailey. You're like, hey, let's do this fun little exercise deal. Let's
just for fun.
It's just cool. Next thing you know, it's like, oh, and we're going to bring this guy and this other athlete.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, now it feels more like I got to show up. I don't want to be the guy that drags everybody down in this group competition. I don't want to be the guy that's last.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure. Yeah.
So ego gets involved. And to me, I've always, I've heard it this way and thought this for years and years and years. It's when it's competition, it's not fitness. As soon as competition comes in, fitness goes out the window.
It's sport now, right?
It's sport.
It's sport.
Completely different. It's what you gotta do to win. And the thing is fitness is different. Fitness doesn't involve competition, or when it does involve competition, it can really lead to injury. So yes, I enjoy working out with a buddy and doing a CrossFit WOD together and pacing. He pushes me to be faster and do better. But at the end of the day, I've tried really hard to check my ego at the door when I walk into a gym or I go do a competition and go, I'm competing against me ultimately.
Yep.
And I listen to my body when I'm doing it.
Yeah, for sure. And I would even say competition isn't dangerous. Competition isn't, but it's the things that we often do. It's that ego, like you said, that gets in the way. What am I willing to sacrifice now to win? And is it worth it? And let's be real, for athletes like myself and Rory, when we were in that realm and we were like, you know what, we're trying to be the fittest person in the world. We're trying to win the games. The risk was worth the potential reward. It was. I mean, we had trained for what most people would say a lifetime for those moments, and the risk was worth the reward. So we were willing to do things that were maybe compromise position, or maybe it was pushing ourselves further than we were used to. But I don't do that anymore. Like, there's no way. I train 1 hour a day, and when I do it, I work out. And if I find that something bothers me, I back off. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to do this movement. I'm going to substitute this instead, or I'm going to keep the weight lighter. And that's still a hard, difficult process. But I think the thing that I've learned is that, hey, I'm not trying to be the fittest in the world anymore. But what I want is a healthy lifestyle. And my work inside the gym should complement that and enhance that. It shouldn't take away. And that's what's helped me check my ego now, is like, okay, hey, what I'm about to do in the next hour, is that going to make my life outside the gym better or worse? If the answer is worse, then I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's smart. So on that note then, I've been following you do programming. And part of your Icon Athlete and an Icon brand is you offer different types of exercise for guys like me. For example, when I would go to the CrossFit gym, the local CrossFit gym back in Oregon City, I'd go to Happy Valley CrossFit, and I love going to the gym, but I would go 2 days a week. Yeah, maybe. And a lot of the people in there would go 5 days a week or more. Mm-hmm. And some of them, whatever the workout was, or no matter what they were feeling from like a workout 2 days ago, they're still going to go in and they're going to hit that workout. And there's also a community around it that's like, yeah, you need to show up. And if you're not there, you're the loser who wimped out, So I guess I've always sort of self-regulated, been like, you know what, I'm not going to do this. It's too, today is not that kind of day, and I did this exercise outside the gym, so this WOD or this workout doesn't make sense if I do this. And
yeah,
what I like about what you've done is the way you've designed it, with lifestyle and strength, and it depends on what in each individual's fitness goals are. Your programming takes all of what I do already or what I did in the past into consideration, and allows me to sort of almost like a what do you call it, like a cafeteria, kind of go in and pick what I want, and apply it to what I do, and it puts a little more responsibility on me, or makes me more conscious of what I'm doing to be fit, rather than just show up every day and follow exactly what's on the board.
Yep.
So can you take a minute and kind of describe to listeners what it is exactly, how Icon works? And I follow your pretty much your lifestyle and your strength programming.
So I think, first of all, like one of the things to consider is CrossFit. I think people often assume it's like a franchise, right? So if I go to CrossFit A, it's the exact same as CrossFit B, but that's not the case. People that run CrossFit gyms can run them essentially almost any way they want within following a few guidelines. So part of the culture and the experience that people have is going to be dictated by the way the owner or the trainers want the gym to be run. So taking that into consideration, one of the things I think you said that you did really well is that self-regulating, right? But that can also be difficult to do sometimes when we have an exact thing written on the board, and if we have a hard time kind of checking our ego and the rest of the guys are doing the same workout, I feel like I have the need to do that. It takes a while to go through that, checking your ego. So one of the things that I really love about Icon that we've tried to do is we basically have 4 different options for people to choose from. And it can be everything from someone that wants to try to be the fittest person in the world to guys like you and I that now are just like, you know what? I want this to enhance my lifestyle. And the way that we've built it is the core workout is exactly the same. So the very meat and potatoes of the workout is always the same for the most part. It's just going to be varied with how much weight people use or possibly some of the movements that they do, but it's very similar. And then we just kind of layer in additional pieces on top of that. And some of those might be like an endurance piece. Some of it might be a strength piece. Sometimes it might be more of a body weight emphasis. And then what we've done is allowed people to basically say, you know what? I want to follow, let's say, the lifestyle track, which is generally an hour long, gives you a warm up, gives you a workout, a goal for your workout, and then any cool down work that you should do. And if that's what you want to follow, awesome. I follow very, very similar to that amount of volume right now. And if someone says, you know what, I feel good today, I want to add in the strength portion from the strength track. Cool, you can add that in. Or if someone says, you know what, I really want to work on that endurance piece or I want to go for a hike, right? And I'm going to substitute that endurance piece for the hike. We can do that. So you can basically customize it a little bit to yourself so that it allows you to have the best results with the best recovery, which I think is really important. That word recovery, we got to make sure that we're recovering so that we have productive work.
So what about the risks of, you know, a lot of people will make a comment about lifting weights like squats. You know, I'll go do a squat and post it on Instagram. Someone will come along and say, you know, bro, you are just going to wreck your knees and your back if you keep doing that. You need to back off. Is that true?
I don't think so. Like, go back to context, right? Why? Often people say those things and they have no idea why. So they'll say, oh yeah, you know, deadlifting is going to hurt your back. And you're like, why? Well, just because. Well, then don't pick up your backpack, homie, because that's a deadlift. You know, like, okay, you know, squatting is going to hurt your knees. Okay, well, don't sit on the toilet because that's what you just did. You just did a squat. Like, that is what you do. So kind of like we said earlier, take the word CrossFit out. And if I just say, hey, sit down and stand up, pick something up off the floor, put something over your head, people all of a sudden, oh, well, yeah, well, I can pick up my backpack. Okay, cool. Well, what happens if you were strong enough to pick up a backpack that weighed 300 pounds, right? Okay, cool. Well, that's great, because now if I can pick up a backpack that weighs 300 pounds, when I pick up one that's 50 pounds, chances are it's not going to be an issue and I'm not going to hurt myself. So can you get hurt lifting weights? Yes. Can you get hurt walking across the street? Yes. Can you get hurt doing anything? Yes. And we can do that. We can mitigate that by doing things with good mechanics or good form. And that means I have to check my ego and use the appropriate loading and have the appropriate volume. It's funny. I was talking to some people at the gym the other day. I have this conversation often with one of the guys that I work with here. Is, I own a CrossFit gym and I run one. And I was like, you know what? The injuries that we see in our gym are not from people deadlifting and back squatting. They're somebody dropped a plate on their toe, or somebody tripped on the box, or somebody. It's like it's just life, but it's not the movement. So can people get hurt lifting weights? Yeah, just like you can hurt yourself if you overdo it hiking with too heavy of a pack and increase the volume too much. But if we introduce that with correct mechanics and volume, it's only going to make us better.
I have heard of guys suffering for a year or even two from a single backpack hunt that they went on.
Yeah.
Where, they packed like 4 miles, packed an elk out with all its quarters, antlers and everything, and they tried to do it in one load or something, and they're carrying a lot of weight. They get home and then their low back or their knee bothers them for the next, 6 months.
Yeah.
That's a real risk, especially in backpack hunting, especially when you're hunting big game that's big, like elk or moose, or it's just, we put loads on our bodies that exceed the average person by a large degree. And the thing with backpacking is when you put a load on that's full of meat like that, and it's 150 pounds or 200 pounds, and a guy carries that out for 5 miles, that's a lot different than doing 5 squats at 200 pounds.
Yeah.
This is like 4 hours of carrying that load on your back. And when I see guys that aren't prepared for that because they haven't put the time in, their spine can't take that loading and the rest of their body.
Yeah.
And then they run it for 4 hours and they are really messed up for months and months, or maybe even years.
Yep.
So I've always, felt like if I want to engage in those activities, then I need to spend some time building up to that ability.
Yeah.
And hiking by itself doesn't get me there when I'm carrying those kind of loads. At least in the case for me is where I find it risky is if you put a pack on and you climb downhill and you slowly increase those loads, like you said, with proper loading over time. So you're not jumping from an ability to do 90 pounds to all of a sudden 150 pounds in a week. That's going to cause some problems. So checking that ego at the door, being patient with your fitness, I think are critical. But more than that, what I never want to do is find myself with a 150 pound pack on, slipping on a rock that rolls, and then not having the strength or the connective tissue to like we talked before, to recover from those margins of movement that I don't normally use.
And that's the thing, is we can build up a tolerance to room for error by being stronger. And that, I think people, when we say that, they sometimes get confused, like, well, I can't get strong because I can't deadlift 500 pounds. I'm not talking about that kind of strong. Like, I'm just talking about a base level strength, and if we think about it in the sense that, okay, if you can, let's go back to that back squat. If you can only back squat 135 pounds, and then you try to put a 150 pound pack on your back and carry it for 5 miles, like it's going to be tough, right? Right. And because now I'm asking myself to do something that's very far outside of my comfort zone or my experience. But what if I could back squat 250 pounds, which is a pretty reasonable weight for people that have been around for a little while and, lift even on an occasional basis, recreationally, Mm-hmm. And now I pick up a pack that weighs 150 pounds. Well, I have this kind of 100-pound buffer, right? Yep. Where now if I do make a little bit of a slip, or if I'm in a compromised position as I'm climbing over something, I can recover from that without having a muscle tweaked or something go wrong, like bad wrong, that because we have to strengthen that, right? And I think that plays such a huge role. And also the cool thing about essentially like what we're looking to do with Icon and the lifestyle track is just, I don't want you just to be able to back squat 250 pounds. Like I also want you to be able to carry the pack that's 150 pounds and do it well. So people can be strong, but not fit. Just like people can run a mile really fast, but they're not fit. They wouldn't be able to, the guy with the world record for the mile, if you put a 150 pound pack on his back, he'd fall over, right?
Right.
So it's like, how do we create the biggest, broadest exposure to fitness so that no matter what I do, I'm not too far outside my comfort zone. I can handle it.
So what are the ingredients then to go and get that fitness while not and staying safe?
Yeah. So like one, make sure that you use the right, like you move well. And I know that can be difficult because there's all sorts of resources out there that, you know, here's how you should do this and here's how you should do that. So ultimately, pain-free range of motion should be your guide, and make sure that your spine is in a neutral position. So the old high school football coach was right. Lift your chest, arch your back, right? Yeah. So like pain-free range of motion in that. Okay. So now, if we have, go ahead.
So, and people can actually find that you have that resource, right? Like I always Google you and have for years. Okay. Let's look at Chris and how he does a certain movement, right? Yeah. So you actually have that in a library of content.
Yeah. It's called the Vault. It's just on iconathlete.com. So if someone signs up for our programming, they get access to the Vault, and it has an ever-growing library of movements where people can search how to do things. So if they don't know what it is, a warm-up movement, a movement in a workout, how to scale a movement down, they can go in there and filter through those things and get an option that they can do. So that's a great resource.
So if you can't get into the position of the squat, like what you're, you know, like how it really should be, you're showing them how to do what they can do.
Sure. Yep. And that's usually it's okay. Let's limit the loading so that we can do that right. And there are guys that I work with that are really strong, but certain things they're just not strong at. And it can be a mobility issue, or it could have been a previous injury that they had from when they were a kid. There's all sorts of things, right? So pain-free range of motion is huge, right?
Okay. And so that's one of those ingredients, movement, pain-free motion.
Yeah. And then I would take that, and then I'd start to make sure that we do that consistently. So let's make sure that we can do that frequently. I know how to move well, not just for one rep, but for multiple reps. And that could look like 10 or 15, or, you know, even when I get tired, I can start to make adjustments and fix those positions to keep them good. And then the last idea is just like, okay, now that I can do that, maybe I can do that a little bit faster, or maybe I can do that a little bit heavier. And that's on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes we can do that, and sometimes we can't. Now that's kind of like the what. Now to kind of finish the recipe there, we want to have, if you kind of, I hate to use the term functional movement because everything's functional now, right? Yeah. But movements that you guys will see apply outside of the gym as well. Not just inside the gym, but outside. So we want to have movements that are going to give us value in and outside of the gym. After that, I want to have variety, right? Because variety is going to create, like we talked about, this big, broad exposure so that when I stumble into picking up a heavy pack, I can pick it up. Carrying it long distance, I can do that. Doing a shorter workout or a shorter effort, I can do that. So the variety, and it's also nice because it keeps us entertained, right?
Yeah, totally.
And then the last thing is, again, that once we start to kind of get used to those things is, okay, well, maybe we can do those with more intensity. And that's where people get kind of bugged out, like intensity's bad, but it just means hard work, right? So as we start to get used to how to do the movements well, and do them consistently, well, maybe I can do them a little bit heavier or faster, but that's down the road. And down the road could be a matter of weeks or even years. And again, that's a day-to-day assessment that we can do on our own. I'm comfortable with these movements. I can do them quickly. I'm not. I need to do them slowly and make sure I do them well.
So on the loading thing, I see a lot of people just not load properly.
Yeah.
And that often has to do with ego for us guys.
For sure.
Right. How does a guy, decide how much to load? Like,
yeah.
Where do you go? Oh yeah, I'm probably going to hurt myself, or no, I got this. I totally got this. This is well within my means. How do people, especially if you haven't done it your whole life, feeling that or figuring that out can be tricky. What is your recommendation there?
For sure. So a couple things. One of the things I love about the icon is we give people specific times that they should shoot for, like a goal time for the workout. And if people read that and they think, okay, I'm supposed to do this amount of work in this amount of time. If I can't do that, step one, I should lighten the weight. So that's already kind of there as a valuable resource. And then again, ultimately, the loading thing is, can I maintain position, good position, or can't I? And if I can't, it's too heavy. Okay. And then if we think about the prescribed repetitions or sets, can I do that? There are weights that I can do for 3 reps that I can't do for 10 reps, right? So we just have to kind of take into consideration, all right, how many reps am I supposed to do? Do I think I can maintain that position? Yes, no. If the answer is, yeah, I think I can, okay, well, we'll use that weight. But guess what? In the middle of that training session, it's okay to reevaluate and be like, you know what? I overshot it a little bit. I need to peel some weight. And guess what? There are times where we're going to say, you know what? I feel really good and I kind of didn't go heavy enough. So maybe I should add a little bit of weight.
Yeah.
It's just an evaluation and assessment as we go.
Okay. And so one more question on recovery. How does a guy know, whether they should go back to the gym and push it, or whether they're just being a sissy because they don't feel like exercising, or whether they should get there and go for it as hard as they can? Because I find myself just one of the best things I ever did for myself was actually focus on recovery and make that, self-talk around that space, because I am guilty of just wanting to work out every day, multiple times a day, and feeling like that's going to get me where I want to be faster.
Yep.
Volume.
Yeah. I think most people fall into that category with a certain personality. So two things are going to help with recovery more than anything. One is nutrition. And I know you've talked about that a little bit in the past. That's kind of a whole other topic for discussion. And 2 is sleep. So if we can get 8+ hours of sleep each night, now we're cooking. And that's difficult for some of us, right?
Yeah.
So those 2 things will help create a better environment for recovery. And then on top of that, there's some really simple things that we can just assess when we think about recovery. There's a lot of things that we can go into, but really simple things where you don't need any fancy stuff. You don't need like an app on your phone. All you can think about is like, hey, sleep quantity. So how much did I sleep last night? Did I get less than 6 hours? Did I get more than 6 hours? Sleep quality. Was I tossing and turning, or did I sleep like a rock last night? Those 2 are big. Your body weight, if you guys weigh yourself each morning, it should be relatively close. Depending on our size, there's, you wouldn't want to see a fluctuation of 3 pounds below or 3 pounds above just that kind of average body weight that you see stepping on the scale every day. And then the other 2 things that I would look at are just your immune status. So like, hey, do we feel that tickle in our throat? Are we starting to get a sore throat? Am I starting to get the head cold? Am I starting to get the body aches? And then the last one is just like our general mood. Am I stoked to be in the gym and working out, or am I not? And if we look at those things, and if most of those things are there and in check, kind of give yourself the green light, go ahead. But if you see more than half of those things not in check, maybe that's like a proceed with caution type thing, or take a day off. And as hard as that is, if we take one day off now, it will often lead to another week and a half, 2 weeks of productive training, where if we just dig in for 2 or 3 more days, it can often, that immune status gets worse, our sleep gets worse, we step into, instead of overreaching, overtraining, and now we got to take off for a week and a half or 2 weeks.
That's one thing that I've told myself, or I found over the years, is that I'm much better off by exercising, by saying, okay, I'm going to do less volume, less workouts, but my workouts are going to be really high quality when I do them. But I'm going to take more rest time and really slowly build up my volume. And especially, I'm 42, I'm getting a little older. And those time between recovery is a little different than when I was in my 20s. But I often tell myself on days I feel I want to work out, but I can feel that tickle in the throat, or I can just tell I feel like crap. I tell myself, okay, if I take this day off or the next day off, that'll set me back a couple days. But if I go too far and I get sick, that'll set me back 2 weeks.
Yeah.
3 weeks. And what I found is I get way more gains in my fitness than I used to by exercising way more patience and going way slower.
Yeah. And that's like, so with that concept of slower, I think it's that, okay, instead of worrying about it right here, right now, like I need to be fit tomorrow. It's okay. Let me just look at this as like a longevity piece. Then here's the cool thing too. For those of you guys that are listening and you like to do the hikes and you like to do the longer rucks and things like that, the good news is if you keep those on a very light load, that can actually help aid in recovery. So long duration efforts that are kind of in that 90-minute window, like an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours, where they're really low intensity, we see a lot of blood flow there, and blood flow can help eliminate soreness. It can help aid in recovery if you guys have like achy joints, things like that, obviously within reason. So those can be valuable days where maybe we don't feel that great to hit it hard in the walls of the gym, to say, you know what, today is a day where I could still go for a longer hike just with maybe like my backpack with my water and my food in it, and maybe, really light load pack. And that's a great way for us to still feel productive, but not put ourselves in the hole where we're not able to work out for the next 2 weeks.
Right. That makes total sense. Well, I think that's it. That kind of covers the topic today. I would like to dive into the nutrition thing next time we talk, because I think that's that other part of recovery that I think a lot of people, especially for me, as I got older, I've completely changed the way I eat now. I don't eat nearly the way that I used to, not even remotely. And man, I feel better than I did in my late 20s.
It's huge. It makes a big difference.
So that's definitely a topic to get into. But I want to thank you for coming on the Gritty Bowmen podcast again. And,
man.
Stay gritty, Chris. You got anything you want to add?
No, I love it. If there's anything that your listeners have questions about, please feel free, guys. It's not like a ego thing on my end. It's not I'm right, you're wrong. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have regarding anything. If you've heard this is bad for you, this is good for you, fire them away, man. That's what it's about, learning how to make ourselves better so you guys can enjoy life.
Yeah, I always try to say, disagreement does not mean disrespect.
No.
We can it's good discussion to have. You have your experiences, I have mine, and it's great when we can just kind of talk about them. And we don't always come to the same conclusion, but it's good to have the discussion. So thanks, man. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
In 1907, only 41,000 elk remained in North America, and in 1950, only 12,000 pronghorn remained. Today, there are more than 1 million elk and 1.1 million pronghorn. Why? Because hunting is conservation. In 1937, hunters actually requested an 11% tax on guns, ammo, bows, and arrows to help fund conservation. That tax so far raised more than $8 billion for wildlife conservation. Altogether, hunters pay more than $1.6 billion a year for conservation programs. No one gives more. It's obvious that hunters care about animals, and yet we actively hunt and kill them. Many people cannot understand this dichotomy. How can we both care about animals and also kill them? It's a question that I challenge all of you to consider. Here is an excerpt from the Gritty Bowmen film, Alberta, with a quote from Fred Bear that describes my feelings on this subject. The first shot on this buck was fatal, and it cleanly pierced his vitals, but he didn't go down. I hate to see animals suffer, and when possible, I will always shoot them again if I have the opportunity. I have tremendous respect for this buck and his will to survive. He didn't go down easy, and I have mixed emotions about that. At times like this, I am reminded of a quote by Fred Bear, which somewhat describes my thoughts on this matter. Quote, I have always tempered my killing with respect for the game pursued. I see the animal not only as a target, but as a living creature with more freedom than I will ever have. I take that life if I can, with regret as well as joy, and with the sure knowledge that nature's way of fang and claw and starvation are a far crueler fate than I bestow. I do not hunt for the joy of killing, but for the joy of living, and the inexpressible pleasure of mingling my life, however briefly, with that of a wild creature that I respect, admire, and value. We can argue as much as we like, but the fact is, hunting is man's oldest and most successful try at life. Every human being is alive today because our ancestors hunted. So it's a relatively new phenomenon for people to regard hunting as a cruel and frivolous activity that has no worth outside of personal gratification for the hunter. The funny thing is, hunting has increased my appreciation for wild animals and wild places, not decreased it. And as I watch society lose its ties to wildlife and conservation, I feel my bond with nature grow ever stronger in direct correlation to my time spent hunting. I understand now more than ever that hunting is the greatest hope for creating the next generation of true conservationists. Never stop sharing your passion for hunting in the outdoors. Our wild animals and wild places depend on it. As always, good luck on your hunts and stay gritty.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
Gritty Bowmen.